Hey, how you going? So, John Expedition and Game. This is my social media live feed, and hopefully I can follow it on. Alright, sweet, I've got you guys live. So, I can see what's going on. Cool. Only got one so far. Alright, I'm also filming from my home as well, so that's all good. Alright, scope. Alright, what we're going to cover is ANZAC Day plans for the ANZAC Day that I'll host from here. Going to bit of my opinion on COVID-19, and then also I'm going to discuss about the East Timor 2008 incident that happened while I was in theatre. I'm going to talk about walking my solo trip around the Coromandel solo, and then just finish off with the 4-drive prices at the moment, which are going pretty cheap, pretty crazy because of the lockdown. Alright, sweet. So for those that have just joined, there's only 4 of us at the moment, hopefully there'll be more. ANZAC Day plan. So I plan to run ANZAC Day morning service from here, and what I want to do is cover it early in the morning, so kick off around 5:30, and then kick off with a morning coffee and a rum in front of you guys, and then obviously try and conduct a normal service, obviously using aids from the internet for various sounds and bits and pieces, and then go through just a full service, probably about an hour or so long, and it wouldn't be too boring. So I'd have the ode, I'd have the reveille. I'd try use the internet to play a bit of music for the bagpipes and for the last post, and then I'll put together a bit of a speech, and also just a bit of history, bit of World War II or World War I history I can write up and I can say aloud, so that'd be all good too. So the ANZAC Day will be a morning service. It'll be early in the morning, probably around about kicking off 5:30 prepping, and then 6 o'clock probably kick off, and then go through to 7 o'clock, and that sort of ties in with your normal ANZAC Day that you would see or partake in. However, if the lockdown is over and we're able to go to our normal ANZAC service, I'd probably be visiting the Burnham service, probably pop my nose in there and partake in the ANZAC service there. If we're in lockdown still and it's the 25th, then I'll do an electronic lockdown as well. So thanks for joining us, guys. We've got a few more viewers, got 5 viewers on there. I'll just cover the scope again. So just talking ANZAC Day plans, I'll say my opinion on the COVID-19 situation with the country. I'm going to talk about the 2008 Timor incident when the President and Prime Minister got assassinated. I've got a bit of stuff on here to talk about, and then also walking in the Coromandel Ranges solo as well. And then going to finish off with the 4-drive prices at the moment too, which are real cheap. Cool, alright, looks like we're picking up a bit of momentum. Sweet, cool. Alright, I'll start this off again. So ANZAC Day plans, alright? So I want to run an ANZAC Day service from here. Alright, on ANZAC Day, morning, kick off around 6 o'clock. be prepping in about 5:30, and then I'll run the service for about an hour. From there, kick off with the ode. I'll say the boys in second first that have died in action or in service. I'll read those names and their regimental details as part of the service, and then I'll be conducting the service. I'll chuck in a Padre's prayer. I'll chuck in some various bits and pieces that you normally find with your ANZAC service, and then from there do the ode, then use the internet to play the last post, and I'll write up a bit of World War II history or World War I history, a bit of a story, and read that out as well. Should be about an hour long roughly, so it should be pretty good. So that is ANZAC Day. Obviously I'll chuck on a suit and wear my medals and my poppy and that should be all well and good. So that's sort of ANZAC Day prepped up. This here is a bit of a dress rehearsal just to see how it would go with our, so tonight is a bit of a dress rehearsal for ANZAC Day. So if it goes well, then that means I can incorporate a bit of media as such as we go along. Sweet, so that's ANZAC Day covered off. Alright, now the COVID-19 situation with New Zealand. This is just a personal opinion. However, I think the government's made the right decision and tried to nip it in the bud early. And I think that being in lockdown is a good thing for us. Obviously, if you haven't ever really had any savings, or if you're living week to week and you're renting, well then, yeah, sure, it's going to hit you hard, because you're going to be out of pocket. But for those of us that have bought houses and are pretty self-sufficient and have regular income and have a bit of savings to rely on, then we're pretty lucky. I think we're pretty well off. We're pretty lucky that we've tackled this early compared to other countries in the world, such as Spain and Italy, and even countries like America and cities like New York. I think we've covered it off pretty well. It's been pretty disheartening to see what's happened in the world in terms of the cases and the deaths, but in terms of something that hasn't got a vaccine, like this doesn't have a vaccine, so we've sort of got nothing to fight it off with yet. And the way the coronavirus is built, as in the cell structure of the virus itself, it isn't living and it isn't dead. So the coronavirus itself, the molecules and the cell structure, it's not living and it's not dead, but it waits for a healthy host, which is a living human. So it is some similarities with say what the 21st century would call a zombie, I guess. It's got similar characteristics to say how the pathogen on World War Z, the zombie apocalypse, how that sort of works. This virus has some definite similarities with that, as in the virus isn't alive or it's dead, but it is spread, and then once it sort of comes along and it goes onto the host, then that's where it becomes alive and it starts to do its thing. I think New Zealand's we're pretty lucky. We're pretty isolated anyway from the rest of the world. However, it didn't stop it reaching us at all. Being in Christchurch, we're quite well isolated, but it didn't take long for an outbreak to happen, which was on the news tonight. Also for our for our age group. So obviously I'm in the mid-adult range, so I'll be 25 through to 35. So that's a pretty good age group to be in. Our immune systems are designed to sort of hold the infection, and our immune system can fight it off. Unfortunately for our senior pers, it doesn't do so as well. Hey, how are we going, guys? So I just put some light onto my medals down there, which are pretty important. So I just finished talking about coronavirus. I just want to point out here that this little video is just some photos from my service, and if you blow this frame up, you'll be able to see the pictures. Alright, cool. So that's the coronavirus, and that's the ANZAC Day covered off. Alright, cool. So in 2008, on the 11th of February 2008, I was serving in Timor-Leste as a New Zealand soldier under the New Zealand government banner, which was then under the United Nations banner. So in 2008, on the 11th of February, George Bush, George Bush, he released a statement about the activities that went on that day whilst in East Timor, and the activities that I'm going to enlighten you on had a worldwide effect on the 11th of February, and US President George W. Bush had this to say about it. Condemned the assassination attempt and added, "Those who are responsible must know that they cannot derail democracy in Timor-Leste, and they will likely be held accountable for their actions." Right, so that's a big press statement by the US President George W. Bush in reference to Timor-Leste on the 11th of February. Alright, so I'm just going to read out the events of the 11th of February in Timor-Leste. Alright, events began before dawn when rebel soldiers led by Alfredo Renardo entered the residential compound of the President Jose Ramos Horta in the capital Dili. They disarmed the security detail on duty and entered the compound. Ramos Horta was not there. He had been jogging out in the local area. The second security team, arriving to relieve the night team, saw Renardo in the house and opened fire, killing Renardo with a headshot to the head. Another rebel, the Mercando Exposto, was also killed. Ramos Horta was alerted of the gunfight at his presidential compound. Now, where this presidential compound was in relation to where I was and my section was, and in Timor-Leste, was within about a 10-kilometre range of us. So that's the range of the initial gunfight. As Ramos Horta was alerted of the gunfight, but he was also walked up to his hill, to his home. Renardo's men opened fire as the president of Timor-Leste approached his home. one of the presidential guards was used as a human shield. The guard was shot and he was taken to hospital in a serious condition. And then the surviving rebels fled the scene. Now that morning, I remember quite precisely that morning when I was in Timor-Leste, that it was just a normal morning for all our soldiers, and then it wasn't until we picked up on the secure comms on the radio we got given briefings and an update on the situation. It happened pretty quickly because it all kicked off just around 6 o'clock. Of the Prime Minister's vehicle as he was making his way home into Delhi. The car continued to proceed for some distance with the Prime Minister unhurt. The Prime Minister then abandoned his car and then ran into the bush and called for help. So basically what happened on that morning is there were 2 attacks by 2 groups of armed rebels under Rafado Anado. Alright, so they went for, Alfredo Renado and his group, they went for the president, Juris Ramos Horta, and they tried to attack him out, but they failed, as the president was going for a local morning jog. However, the security guards were able to take care of the situation. And then another group under Alfredo Renado, but detached, ambushed and tried to take out the Prime Minister. So they were not successful in that either, but they did shoot out the vehicle, one of the security guards' vehicles. So this all kicked off pretty early in the morning, on the 11th of February, and as a soldier I was posted at a police station, at Bukhara police station with my section, and then our platoon HQ was further down the road. This came through as alarming news, and then obviously all call signs were stood too, and then the chain of command and the comms link were all slowly informed, and then the command Kiwi element then made decisions on what was going on. It all happened fairly quickly. So it all happened between 0600 and 0730, the coordinated attacks on the President of East Timor and the Prime Minister of East Timor on the 11th of February 2008. So just on 7 o'clock, Ramos Horta, the President, was making his way inland, and he refused to arrive from the passing vehicle and walked up to the public road to the house intersected, escorted by his 2 bodyguards with pistols. About returning to his home, about 20 metres from the gate, he was fired upon. Men laying away across from the main entrance to his residence. So Alfredo Renato had men positioned across the president's house and also inside. The gunshots did wound him. The gunshots did wound the president, and he was then evicted out of there. The attackers, some of the attackers were able to flee in a vehicle as well. Once the president was fired upon, he was able to take cover, and then obviously with his little security detail, he was able to make a few quick phone calls, and then help came through. Paramedics came on scene, and the GNR, which was the Portuguese sort of military outfit that was stationed there, they came through, and they were the QRF on scene, so that was the GNR. So that was between 0600 and 7:30, and then obviously 8:30 and for about another hour was the attack on the Prime Minister. So the units of the Portuguese National Republican Guard, they were the first to respond to this incident, and they were the QRF to both the Prime Minister and the President attacks. Right, so from my point of view as a soldier, so I was stationed at Bicara police station. We were just sort of told to stay put, and we just had our radio glued to our ear, and from there there was orders were given through the chain of commands, and then what was to happen was a response from, I suppose, the whole entire Australian and New Zealand contingent. And in the next couple of months from then on, things changed completely in Timor-Leste. It kicked off with a curfew in Dili, and that was a curfew at night time. And pretty much after the attack had happened, the locals stayed indoors. They didn't want anything to do with it, so there was a curfew imposed for quite a while. So there was a curfew imposed for roughly about 30 days in Timor-Leste, and then there was operations launched within the Australian and New Zealand Defence Force contingents within Timor-Leste, and that's all I'll say about that. What happened on the 11th of February in East Timor received worldwide press. the United Nations at the time, the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon condemned the attacks on Ramashora as brutal and unspeakable. Condemns in the strongest possible terms these unacceptable attacks on the legitimate institutions of the state and calls upon the Timorese people to remain calm and refrain from violent acts. And that's pretty much what sort of happened from our perspective for the rest of that day. There wasn't too much untoward in our area of the Pikara police station that we're stationed at. What was then to happen after those attacks was obviously operations launched against the rebels, which I won't delve into. However, they were successful to a point within a couple of months. So there were articles all over the world. There were articles from the New York Times. There was articles from The Guardian, which is a British paper. And then, yeah, so even the New York Times, they had a lot to say on that as well. The president of East Timor on that day, he was extracted back to Darwin Hospital, and he was looked after, and he made a full recovery in Darwin Hospital, and that's where he sort of remained while this small conflict was going on back in Timor-Leste. As for myself and in my section, well, I was the one that I was on the radio at the time when the call came through from HQ about what was happening, and at first I wasn't too sure what to make of it, but then once the information came through, obviously my drill was to tell my chain of command within our little section HQ. And from there, we just stood by on standby, just ready for anything really. So that's a bit about the 2008 Timor incident when I was serving there. Alright, just going to jump back a couple of years forward and talk about walking the Coromandel Ranges solo. So when I was preparing for a course within the New Zealand Army, I had to do a bit of prep, and it was pack walking and it was navigation. And I set myself a challenge that I could walk from the Thames side of the Coromandel to the Taira-Whitianga side, and I planned that over a 2-day period. I was wearing full Fismo. I had some highlighter stuff on my pack, but I was in full military kit. I left from the Thames side early in the morning. I got dropped off early in the morning by my old man, and from there it was pretty much the start of where you'd walk up to Pinnacle's hut. So that's where I started the walk from, just on the start of Pinnacle's hut, and then from there I trekked up to the halfway point of Pinnacle's hut, and then trekked back down into the gut of the Coromandel Ranges. Spent the night in the bush, and then from there pushed up to the tops of the Coromandel Ranges, and then walked through a couple of big hills in the middle of the Coromandel Ranges, and then continued to keep on walking throughout the entire day, right down into the back of Puketui Hills, or Broken Hills, Puketui Track, and ended up coming out of that about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on day 2. I was pretty shattered on it. I was only carrying about 35 kgs all up, a little bit of water, or lots of water, a little bit of food, and that's what was a bit of training that I did. So I ended up walking from the Thames side of the Coromandel right through the Coromandel Ranges, coming out to the back of Tyre, Puketui, Broken Hills, coming through there, and that was up and over the Coromandel Ranges in 2 days. It was a pretty big achievement for me at the time. I was quite young. I was only about 21, 22, definitely under 25 when I did that, and I needed to use navigation and the maps and compass. So it was a good walk. The weather was fine during that Coromandel solo trip, and I did it solo as well, and I had no phone reception when I did it, apart from when I was just coming out the back of the Tyre Hills. So that's walking the Coromandel Ranges solo. That's something I'm pretty proud of doing, and it was hard and it was good, and it helped me prepare for the New Zealand Army course, which I embarked on later on. Alright, cool, so that covered that. That's all for it. In terms of full drive prices at the moment, so at the moment we've got the COVID-19, and obviously the country's on lockdown, but that's pushed lots of people out of their employment because of the job sector that they're in, and that's pushed a lot of people to rejuggle their finances, and also what's happened is those luxury items that they have, well, they've got to make those, they've got to sell those. So if you haven't noticed already, that a lot of people are selling a whole lot of stuff that they don't need, and those luxury items are going for cheap. An example of those is the full drive prices at the moment have dropped down quite a bit, substantially, and there's that are going for quite cheap. A lot of full drives going for quite cheap, and I'd imagine it'd be the same for any other luxury items that people need to sell quickly to make a bit of dough on the other side. So yeah, so that sort of covers my podcast for tonight. So just probably go back to the start. So got my ANZAC Day planned, so I want to do ANZAC Day from here if we're still in lockdown, and I'll provide an hour service for that. Covered off the COVID-19 and my personal opinion. Talked about the history of 11th of February 2008 and the Timor incident, and then walking the Coromandel Ranges and covering the full drive prices at the moment. So that's my podcast. I've been going for nearly clicked over 30 minutes. So that's me. So now you're starting to click on and watch it, but I pretty much covered everything. So yeah, so thanks for jumping on, and hopefully you learnt a little bit about the history of Timor-Leste and the assassination attempts. I did not divulge anything that was already on the internet, and I would never divulge operations of such, because I just don't do that. But what I've told you about the incident is already on the internet, so you can find that in readily sourced information. So yeah, so that's it. So cheers from me, and hopefully we do some more of this and get some more views up. Cheers. Bye.